So, today, big news. Hey, they finally get it right. Golf clap. Golf, got to get the right speed. Got to get a metronome. Golf clap for the NFL. It took them 12 years to get it right. Half measure in 2010. They knew that overtime was broken. They partially fixed it. And now, 12 years later, after time and again, especially in the postseason, win the coin toss in overtime, take the ball, win the game, with a couple of exceptions. But for the most part, hey, in a playoff game with a good quarterback, a good offense, the rules skewed in the favor of the offense, you're more likely to score. Nobody ever chooses to kick in overtime. Now, new overtime rules. Both teams are guaranteed a possession. I love it, Myles.
It's funny you say that, the rule was first changed in 2010. I didn't even realize it's been that long that rule had been changed. And that makes sense after the way it was Brett Favre, right? And the Vikings that got that thing changed in the first place, was it not? Or was that something? Am I thinking of something else?
No, it was the 2009 NFC Championship game, the Bounty Gate game, as we would learn 2 years after the fact. They go to overtime. The Saints win the coin toss. They get a decent return. There's a couple of questionable illegal contact penalties, and the next thing you know, they're in position for, I think, Garrett Hartley, if that name rings a bell, and maybe it does, or Hartley Garrett, I don't know, kicks the walk-off field goal, and that's it. And that was the first time it ever happened in a high-stakes game like that. The potential had been there just a year earlier. The season ends. Tampa, first Super Bowl I ever attended, covering it for PFT before we were even part of NBC. I remember standing there thinking, I want chaos. I always root for chaos. Sorry, but through chaos comes change, positive and needed change. I was rooting for the Steelers to get a field goal and go to overtime, and the team that wins the coin toss get a walk-off field goal, and that would have fixed it then. But it didn't happen. Obviously, Ben Roethlisberger to Santonio Holmes. The Steelers win the game. It happens the next year, and they changed it right away. But since then, it took the Bills-Chiefs game to get people to finally realize this may be a problem. It's amazing it took as long as it did, Myles.
But I don't know. It wasn't really a problem. I don't know. I mean, I go back and forth on it. And, it was funny, listening to Kyle Shanahan talk about it today, where he said the rules are the rules, and we just have to
That's a cop-out, though. That's a cop-out. That's a cop-out. I hate that.
Be fine.
The rules are the rules. The rules are meant to be changed.
Okay, yes, it absolutely can be changed. I don't have any problem with the rules changing, but I mean, and I understand that in this day and age where, the game is supposed to favor the offense, the rules all favor the offense, especially if you're in the postseason where you have a good quarterback, you are extremely likely to go down the field and score once you get to overtime. We've seen it time and again, right? And frankly, the Chiefs could have done a way better job of doing it in the AFC Championship game, and they would have been in the Super Bowl and not the Bengals. So, fine, I get it. But at the same time, there's a chance for you to play defense. I like Mike Tomlin. I like sudden death. I don't fear sudden death. Win the game in regulation sometimes, right? That, to me, I get it. But also, if we're going to do this, then fine, let's do it for the postseason. We don't need to see it in the regular season, all right? Especially if, a game has to go, 10 minutes in overtime. Those things have effects for the weeks after and the weeks after. So in the game as quickly as possible in the regular season, in the postseason, I get it. Let's make sure everybody has a possession. Fine.
But that's the rule. They didn't change it for the regular season. You're complaining about something that didn't happen.
I'm not complaining. I'm saying that if they were going to do it, I'm glad they did it this way. Not everything is a complaint that comes out of my mouth like it is with you, Mike.
Here's an observation I have that can be regarded as a complaint. I think these guys are very sensitive to saying anything that would create the impression that they're whining about the rules, that they're not tough enough or sturdy enough to just deal with the rules. That whole Mike Tomlin thing, that's part of his bit. That's part of his way. And maybe it's who he is. Maybe it's not a facade. But I'm not surprised that Mike Tomlin would say that. My point is, and it has been, you got to set aside what your own personal preferences are. You got to set aside things like, well, them's the rules. You got to say, look, what's best for the game? What's the most fair outcome for the game? And I was concerned it wouldn't pass, Myles, because I think there is a mentality out there recognizing that every bad rule gets applied in a good way for one of the two teams. It's a bad rule. It's unfair, but you know what? For the team that wins the coin toss in overtime, I got no complaints about it, and I got a 50-50 chance of winning the coin toss. So that was what made me concerned that teams wouldn't support this because ultimately they don't care about fair. They just care about equal. And we have an equal chance of benefiting from this bad rule as we do being hurt by it. And that sometimes causes teams, especially the teams that have been burned by it in the past, to say, you know what, I'd like to keep this rule around because the law of averages suggests that I'm going to bet. Like the Packers. They got burned in 2014 NFC Championship, 2015 divisional round, overtime games, coin toss lost, first possession touchdown, game over, that's that. If I'm someone with the Packers, I'm thinking, hey, you know, we get in the spot again, we win the coin toss, and we make up for it. So I'm just glad they did it. I think it's fair. And go back to Bills-Chiefs. What would have happened? The Chiefs would have had to decide to go for 1 or 2. They go for 1, let's say, get 7. Bills drive down the field, score. That's when it's high drama. That's when you get your popcorn ready. That's when you hold your breath, because the Bills have to decide, do we go for 1? And if we make it, because it's not 100%, then it's sudden death. We got to kick off to the Chiefs, and they're going to score again. Do we go for 2 with the walk-off win or the walk-off loss? That, to me, is fair. That, to me, is exciting. And that's what we're going to have now in these playoff games. Now watch, there won't be a playoff game that goes to overtime for 12 more years.
That is exactly what I said to Shireen today once they passed that thing. You know, as we are sitting here in person, as Shireen and I are actually getting to work together for once, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it was the first thing I said, is that once this passes now, we are absolutely going to have basically all blowouts, at least for next season, in the postseason. So, I mean, get ready for that, Mike. You know, we try to do something good, at least the league does, in your view, and boom, you know, nothing really is going to come of it because it's not going to matter because we're just going to have a bunch of blowout games.
Well, yeah, and, you know, in a weird sort of way, that would be fitting. Rich McKay, the chairman of the competition committee, said today that the overtime change was data-driven. Well, the data is you're far more likely to win the game on a first-drive touchdown if you win the coin toss. It's not high-level
so
analytics.
Like 10-2, yeah.
Right, and the Chiefs-Bills game was a big factor. Of course it was. That's what caused everyone to say, this change needs to be made. And I said after that game, one of the first posts I did, if they don't do it now, they're never going to do it. They're never going to do it. Because it was one of the best games the NFL has ever seen, and it ended prematurely. It ended with us wanting more in a bad way. Not like the Seinfeld, hey, we want the series to end with people wanting more. We should have ended it a couple of years earlier then. But they you know, you want it to be over even if you wish it could have continued. Like the Chiefs-Rams game from 2018, the epic game that was supposed to be in Mexico City. That game left me wanting more, but I didn't feel like it was an unfair outcome.
Okay, yeah, because somebody won it in regulation. But I mean, that's kind of the point of the whole thing. You know, if you win it in regulation, then we don't have to have these conversations. So if teams are really upset, and it doesn't seem like anybody is, I mean, the vast majority of coaches that spoke this week, including Sean McVay today, was saying that even if you talk to Andy Reid, he'd probably tell you that this rule needs to be changed in overtime for the postseason and something like that. So they got it. They got it done. And I think they really got it done because they had the narrow focus of it just being for the postseason and not for every single week of the regular season as well.
But you know what happened in 2010? In March, they rammed this rule change through, the half measure. The field goal doesn't win it on the first drive. They actually sent the coaches to the golf course, and the owners stayed behind and pushed the rule through. In May of that year, they expanded it from the postseason to the regular season because the coaches said, we need the rules to be the same in the regular season and postseason, which makes no sense at all. It's already different. You have a tie in the regular season, and it's only 10 minutes now, so they've already made that fundamental change. And you play until somebody, you know, wins the game in the postseason. So I don't think that's going to happen again because they need to get these games over with. I agree with you. And I would be fine because I was willing to say, hey, how about this compromise? 1 possession each guaranteed in the postseason. Go back to sudden death for the regular season. Let's just get it over with. Get it over with and move on. You got to be able to heal from the game, win it in regulation, get your victory, and the coin toss, you get a field goal and you'll win. And at one point within the past couple of years, in the run-up to the league meetings, Myles, they were talking about possibly going back to sudden death. Because I remember thinking, whoa, no. If anything, we got to go 1 possession each. But I'd be fine with sudden death in the regular season. Get the games over with and move on. And you know when they'll do it? Here's when they'll do it. when they start looking for more places in the pizza to cram cheese, i.e. Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, more nights of football, more windows. There'll be more occasions where you're playing with 6 and 5 days between games. That's when they'll do everything they can to shrink overtime in the interest of health and safety, in the broader interest of having a schedule where they can play games every night of the week except Friday and Saturday.
That's interesting. I think you're probably right about that. I mean, and Wednesday night football is a different topic altogether. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense if you were to go back to just sudden death for the regular season, just based on the way, as you're saying, like they need to get the games over with. And you don't necessarily want as many games to go as long as you had with like Raiders Chargers in week 18, right? Where you're saying, okay, well, we have to play this entire overtime game. And how much of that was kind of a little bit of a disadvantage for the Las Vegas Raiders when they then had to go play in Cincinnati on a Saturday in the first game of the postseason. So, I mean, all these things kind of factor in here, I think.
Yeah. But the bottom line is good news. The owners get it right. They make the rule change that needed to be made. They put the best interest of the game above all else. And again, as we said, there won't be another overtime playoff game until the year 2035.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.